It was one of those perfect Tuesday mornings, the kind where the sun just hits your kitchen island just right, warming up the granite without being too harsh. I was nursing my second cup of coffee, a dark roast, no cream, no sugar, just the way I like it, and scrolling through the news on my tablet. Nothing too heavy, mostly local stuff, a couple of interesting financial articles. The house was quiet, the only sound being the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the occasional chirp of a bird outside my open window. Yeah, this was the life. This was exactly what I'd worked my butt off for. I remember thinking, as I looked out through the sliding glass doors at my backyard, how peaceful everything felt. The neighborhood, usually bustling even on a weekday morning, seemed to be taking a collective breath. Kids were off to school, most folks were already at work, and the only traffic I could see was the delivery truck making its rounds a few blocks over. It was a stark contrast to how things used to be, let me tell you. A stark, blessed contrast. A little smile played on my lips as I took another sip of coffee. It wasn't just about the quiet. It was about the control, the stability I'd built for myself. My real estate ventures had really taken off in the last few years, far beyond what I'd ever imagined. What started as a modest investment in a couple of rental properties had snowballed into something substantial. It allowed me to not just buy my dream home in this very neighborhood, but also to expand my portfolio right here, block by block. I pulled up a spreadsheet on my tablet just to glance at the numbers. It was satisfying, seeing all those addresses, all those figures, all clicking into place. Managing properties wasn't always glamorous, of course. There were always leaky pipes, tenant issues, and the endless paperwork, but it was my empire, built from the ground up. And the profit margins? Let's just say I wasn't complaining, not even a little bit. I had a call scheduled with my property manager later that morning. Just a routine check-in about the new landscaping bids for the common areas. You know, the usual HOA stuff, except I was the one calling the shots now, not dealing with some power-tripping busybody on the board. The thought of that old regime and certain personalities who used to dominate those meetings still gave me a low-grade shudder. But they were gone, long gone, and good riddance. The neighborhood had thrived without that kind of energy. The sun shifted a little, hitting the potted herbs on my patio. I decided to make another coffee, maybe grab a quick bite. My day was usually pretty flexible once the initial morning check-ins were done. Sometimes I'd head to the gym. Other times I'd drive over to one of my commercial properties downtown. Today felt like a good day for a long walk around the neighborhood, just to admire the progress, the quiet, the general well-being of the place. It was a good feeling, a deep, satisfying sense of accomplishment. I poured my third coffee, grabbed a granola bar, and walked over to the front window. From here, I could see the perfectly manicured lawns, the kids' bikes left carelessly on driveways, the friendly wave from Mrs. Henderson across the street as she checked her mailbox. It was a picture of suburban bliss, the kind you see in commercials, and it was mine. All of it. The quiet, the peace, the sense of community that had finally returned. It was exactly what I deserved, after everything. Everything. I leaned against the window frame, a small, contented sigh escaping my lips. My world was calm, predictable, and firmly under my control. No surprises, no drama, just smooth sailing. Just the way I liked it. A perfect, ordinary Tuesday. Nothing could possibly mess this up. You know how some days just feel too good to be true? Like the universe finally decided to cut you a break? That was my morning. The sun was hitting just right, I had my coffee out on the porch, my dog, Buster, was peacefully napping by my feet, and for once the HOA hadn't sent me a passive-aggressive letter about my lawn gnome collection. Life was, dare I say, serene. I was actually just thinking about how far I'd come. How, after all the drama, all the headaches, all the literal legal battles, I'd finally found peace in the very neighborhood that once felt like a war zone. It had been years since she had been a blip on my radar. Frankly, I hadn't thought about her much, assuming she was exactly where she belonged, behind bars, reflecting on her poor choices and even poorer people skills. A man can dream, right? So there I am, lost in this blissful little reverie, taking a sip of my coffee, when a sound cuts through the morning quiet like a rusty saw. It wasn't loud at first, just a distant, high-pitched squawking. My brow furrowed.
Buster's ears perked up, then immediately flattened back down with an exasperated sigh, which, honestly, mood. The squawking got closer and clearer, and then, like a particularly nasty jump scare in a horror movie you'd escaped, she materialized. Striding down the street, red-faced, hair in that perpetually shellacked, immovable helmet style, and already gesticulating wildly at, well, nothing in particular, but generally at the injustice of the world, I suppose. My coffee mug actually paused halfway to my lips. My first thought was, no way. My eyes are playing tricks on me. It had to be a doppelganger, a particularly unfortunate woman who just happened to have the same awful perm, the same judgmental glare, the same air of undeserved superiority. But then she stopped, dead center in the street, pulled out her phone, and started taking pictures of Old Man Henderson's slightly overgrown hedge, muttering audibly about neighborhood standards and blight. My blood ran cold. It was her, Patricia. The one, the only, the legendary HOA Karen. Back, after all this time, after the conviction, after the incident that landed her in a state-sponsored vacation home for a few years. She was back in my neighborhood, in my sightline, and already complaining about something utterly insignificant. The sheer audacity. A hot flush of annoyance started creeping up my neck. I put my coffee down, a little harder than I intended. Buster actually whimpered and looked at me as if to say, "Oh no, not her again, Dad. Can't we just pretend we're not home?" I felt his pain, believe me, but it was too late. She'd spotted me. Her head snapped in my direction, eyes narrowing as if I was the cause of the slightly overgrown hedge or perhaps the general decline of civilization itself. She started marching towards my house, not walking, marching, like she was on a mission to single-handedly restore order to the universe, starting with my perfectly respectable, if not aggressively manicured, front yard. My peaceful morning? Gone, smashed to smithereens by the relentless force of entitlement. My brain was just screaming, why, how, what does she want now? She stopped a few feet from my property line, hands on her hips, her expression a mix of indignation and was that a hint of triumph? Like she'd just won some cosmic lottery to annoy me specifically. Well, she sneered, her voice just as grating as I remembered. Look what the cat dragged in. Still here, are we? I would have thought you'd have packed up and fled after everything. Her gaze swept over my house, a judgmental survey that practically oozed contempt. I just stood there, arms crossed, trying to keep my face neutral. Inside, though, I was a whirlwind of confusion, surprise, and a rapidly escalating annoyance. Patricia, I said, keeping my voice level, though every fiber of my being wanted to yell, what in the actual hell are you doing back here? She actually scoffed, a genuine, honest-to-God scoff. I'm home, dear, where I belong, unlike some people who clearly have no respect for property values or the peaceful enjoyment of their neighbors. And I see things haven't improved around here, have they? She gestured vaguely at the street, at my house, at the general concept of existence, as if it were all personally offending her. And that's when I knew the nightmare was officially back, and my morning coffee was officially ruined. So, there I was, just minding my own business, Saturday afternoon, a little light gardening, trying to coax some life out of those new hydrangeas. The sun was out, birds were chirping. It was actually peaceful for once, a rarity in this neighborhood, especially with the history I've got here. I was humming some half-forgotten tune, probably sounding like a wounded walrus, but who cares, right? It was my yard, or so I thought. Suddenly, this shadow falls over my pristine petunias, and it wasn't the shade from a cloud. It was a presence, a very familiar, very unpleasant presence. I slowly straightened up, wiping a bead of sweat from my brow with the back of my glove, and there she was, standing at the edge of my property, hands on her hips,
head tilted at that infuriating angle she always used when she was about to deliver a verdict on someone's life choices. It was her, Brenda, or as everyone in the neighborhood, including myself, had affectionately dubbed her, HOA Karen. Fresh out of, well, you know. I had heard whispers she was back in town, but I honestly thought she'd have the good sense to lay low, to integrate, to maybe just exist as a normal human being for a while. Boy, was I wrong. My stomach dropped faster than a lead balloon. That feeling of dread, that familiar knot of frustration, immediately tightened in my gut. I hadn't felt that particular brand of annoyance since the last time she'd tried to find me for the precise shade of beige on my mailbox post. She looked different, a little older, maybe a touch harder around the eyes, but that same entitled scowl was plastered firmly on her face. Her perfectly coiffed blonde hair was still rigid enough to withstand a hurricane, and her pastel power suit, even on a Saturday afternoon, screamed, "I demand to speak to your manager." I took a deep breath, counted to 3. "Brenda," I said, trying to keep my voice even, maybe a little surprised, but mostly just tired. "Fancy seeing you here." She didn't even offer a polite return, didn't crack a smile, just narrowed her eyes and pointed a perfectly manicured finger at my prized hydrangeas. "Is that what I think it is, Mr. Anderson?" Her voice. Oh, her voice. It was like nails on a chalkboard, except the chalkboard was also judging your life choices. I blinked. "It's a hydrangea, Brenda. A fairly common ornamental shrub, actually. I just planted them. They're still a little young, but they'll fill out nicely." I tried for a pleasant, informative tone. It was a mistake. She scoffed, a sound so rich with disdain it could have won an award. "Oh, I know what it is, Mr. Anderson. The question is, why is it there?" She gestured vaguely, encompassing my entire front yard. "You know perfectly well the approved landscaping palette for this section of the community, and unless I'm mistaken, and I assure you I am not, that particular varietal of hydrangea is not on the list. Not to mention, your sprinkler system seems to be watering the sidewalk, a clear violation of water conservation guidelines, not to mention general tidiness." My jaw practically unhinged itself. I just stood there, holding a tiny trowel, staring at her. I mean, seriously? Barely 5 minutes back on the block, and she's already critiquing my gardening? My internal monologue was screaming, "Are you kidding me right now? After everything, she's still on this power trip?" The disbelief was a physical ache behind my eyes. "Brenda," I started, trying to inject some reason into the conversation, "I think you're forgetting a few things. You haven't been around for a while, and the rules, some things have changed." She cut me off, her voice rising in volume and pitch. "Rules don't change, Mr. Anderson. They are bylaws, and they are to be adhered to. I am a returning member of this community, and I find the current state of affairs alarming, utterly alarming. Frankly, your disregard for proper aesthetic standards is exactly the kind of thing that degrades property values for everyone." She took a step onto my lawn, her eyes scanning, assessing, judging. It was like she was performing a forensic audit of my front yard. That's when the anger, a slow burn that had been simmering for years, started to really flare up. My blood pressure spiked. I could feel it. "My property values, Brenda," I said, my voice now tight, edged with a dangerous quietness, "are doing just fine. And frankly, what I choose to plant in my yard is precisely my business." I emphasized "my" just enough to make a point, or at least to myself. She laughed then, a short, sharp, entirely humorless sound. "Oh, it's everyone's business when it affects the entire community, Mr. Anderson. I've heard about the lax enforcement since I've been away, but rest assured, that ends today. I will be speaking with the board first thing Monday morning to ensure these infractions are properly documented and addressed. And frankly, with your history, I'm surprised you haven't learned your lesson about flaunting the rules. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. My chest felt tight. My history? My history? She was talking about my history of trying to peacefully coexist while she terrorized the neighborhood with her petty regulations? The sheer audacity, the unmitigated gall of this woman. After everything she'd put people through, after what she did to land herself in prison, to come back and immediately try to resume her reign of terror, it was beyond frustrating. It was enraging. I straightened up to my full height, which is a good 6 feet, significantly taller than her. I peeled off my gardening gloves, slowly, deliberately, meeting her gaze head-on. The casual, relaxed gardener was gone. In his place was someone who was rapidly losing his patience. "Brenda," I said, my voice low now, a dangerous rumble, "I think you need to understand something. Things have changed. A lot. More than you can possibly imagine. And frankly, your threats about the board, they're not going to hold the weight you think they do." She just smirked, a condescending curl of her lip. "Oh, really, Mr. Anderson? Are you suddenly a legal expert? Or do you just assume because I've been indisposed that I've forgotten how things work? Let me assure you, I am perfectly up to date on all HOA bylaws. And the penalty for unauthorized landscaping is severe. As is the penalty for, well, I'm sure you remember the other incident involving the unapproved shed and the rather aggressive gnomes." She chuckled, as if recalling a fond memory of her tyrannical past. That was it. The gnomes, the shed, the hydrangeas, the water. It was all flooding back, years of her insufferable, soul-crushing micromanagement. My hands were balled into fists at my sides, but I was fighting to keep them there. I could feel the heat rising in my face. The disbelief had turned into pure, unadulterated fury. She had no idea what she was walking into. Absolutely none. She was standing there, on my lawn, threatening me, just like she used to. The arrogance was breathtaking. I looked her dead in the eye, and for the first time, a genuine, mirthless smile touched my lips. A very, very cold smile. "Brenda," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but it carried an undeniable edge. "You really, really picked the wrong day, and the wrong person, to start this up with again." I paused, letting the silence hang heavy, letting my eyes bore into hers. She was starting to look slightly less confident, a tiny flicker of uncertainty in her gaze. Good, because the board you're so eager to speak with, they answer to me. The sun was beating down, people were mingling, the smell of barbecue and potluck dishes hung heavy in the air. It was our annual neighborhood summer picnic, right there in the community park. And I was just enjoying a burger, trying to blend in. Then I felt that familiar chill up my spine, the one that tells you doom is approaching. I looked up, and there she was, Carol, looking exactly like she hadn't spent a day in county. She had that same pinched expression, the same aggressively coiffed blonde bob, the same designer sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. My stomach clenched. Here we go, I thought, round 2. She spotted me across the lawn, and her eyes narrowed like a predator spotting a gazelle or, well, a particularly stubborn houseplant in her case. She stomped over, arms already crossed, her floral sundress somehow managing to look militaristic. I swear the music almost stopped. The hum of conversation around us seemed to dim, like everyone instinctively knew something was about to go down. I took a slow bite of my burger, trying to project an air of utter indifference. It was a performance, honestly. Inside, my heart was a drum solo. "You," she spat, not even a greeting, just that one accusatory syllable, aimed like a poisoned dart. "I knew you'd still be here, still squatting, I see." I chewed slowly, swallowed. "Carol, lovely to see you too. How was your extended vacation?"
I kept my voice even, maybe a little too sweet. I saw a few heads turn our way, curiosity peaking. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for, planning for, ever since I got that call she was being released. Her face, already tight, tightened further. "Don't you dare mock me, you little punk. I paid my dues, and I come back to find this?" She gestured wildly around the park, her eyes sweeping over the new gazebo, the freshly painted playground equipment, the pristine landscaping. "This neighborhood has gone to rot. I bet it's all you're doing, isn't it? Letting the standards drop, letting riffraff move in, probably ignoring all the bylaws I worked so hard to establish." I actually had to bite back a laugh. Ignoring her bylaws? Oh, honey, I rewrote the whole darn book. "Carol, I think you're mistaken. The neighborhood's actually thriving. Property values are up, we've got new amenities, people are happier than ever." I gestured vaguely at the dozens of smiling faces enjoying the picnic. "Lies," she shrieked, her voice suddenly cutting through the general chatter. People closer to us actually flinched. "I spoke to Mrs. Henderson. She told me you're letting people put up those ridiculous inflatable yard decorations for holidays, and that unsightly shed that went up on Elm Street, completely against the aesthetic. I'm calling the HOA."
"You'll be fined into oblivion." Her chest puffed out, a triumphant glint in her eyes, as if the threat of calling the HOA was the ultimate, unchallengeable weapon. It always had been for her. My smile widened. A real, genuine smile this time. This was better than I'd imagined. "You're going to call the HOA, Carol?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, but somehow it seemed to carry. A small crowd had started to gather, drawn by the escalating volume of her voice. Phones were discreetly popping up. Oh, this was going to be good. "Yes, and they'll deal with you, just like they dealt with everyone else who tried to ruin my vision for this community." She was practically vibrating with self-righteous fury. "I'm going to make sure your life here is a living hell, just like you tried to mine." I slowly put my burger down on the picnic table, wiped my hands with a napkin, looked her dead in the eye. "Carol," I said, my voice clear and ringing now, projecting calm authority, "you're absolutely right. The HOA will deal with this. They'll deal with everything, because I am the HOA." The air went out of her, visibly. Her mouth, which had been contorted into a snarl, slackened. Her eyes, magnified by the glare, went wide, then darted around, searching for some sign I was lying, for someone to contradict me. What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice a fraction of its former volume. The growing audience around us was dead silent, hanging on every word. You could hear a pin drop if it wasn't for the distant, joyful squeals from the playground. "After you left," I continued, letting the word "left" hang in the air, weighted with polite euphemism, "the HOA council dissolved. Faced with so many foreclosures and a general loss of faith in the management, I saw an opportunity. I started buying up properties, one by one. The bank-owned, the desperate sellers, even a few from people who just wanted out after all the drama." I gestured around us again, a slow, encompassing sweep. Took a lot of capital, a lot of time, a lot of legal wrangling. But I own this neighborhood now, Carol. Every last plot that matters. The common areas, the park, this community building, and yes, the entire HOA. I'm the sole owner, the sole director, the sole decision maker. So when you call the HOA, you'll be calling me. Her face went through an entire spectrum of human emotion in about 3 seconds. Disbelief morphed into dawning horror, then raw, sputtering rage. Her perfectly coiffed hair seemed to frizz with the intensity of her fury. You can't! That's illegal! You're lying! This is my neighborhood! I built this community! I was here first!" she screamed, her voice cracking, high-pitched and completely unhinged now.
Her hands flew up, gesticulating wildly, fingers splayed like claws. It was pure, unadulterated primal scream. A little kid holding a juice box openly pointed and whispered, "Mommy, she's mad." I just watched her, completely calm. The secondhand embarrassment was palpable in the crowd. Some people were trying to hide smiles, others looked genuinely shocked, but none of them, not one, stepped forward to defend her. She looked around, desperate for an ally, for someone to back her up, but she saw only blank faces, or worse, faces that clearly understood the delicious irony of the situation. "You think you can just waltz back in here and start dictating terms?" I asked, my voice still annoyingly calm, probably fueling her fire. Threatening people, demanding changes? Those days are over, Carol. They were over the moment you got caught trying to illegally evict Mrs. Peterson for having too many garden gnomes. This isn't your kingdom anymore. It's my kingdom. And you're just a very loud, very annoying resident. And frankly, Carol, your noise ordinance violations are becoming a real problem. That was it. That was the final straw. She let out a guttural shriek that scraped against everyone's eardrums, a sound so utterly devoid of reason it felt like it came from another dimension. She started stomping her foot, then grabbed a stray potato salad bowl from a nearby table, not even realizing what it was, and hurled it towards me. It missed by a mile, splattering creamy white goo onto a perfectly innocent hedge behind me. "Get out! Get out of my neighborhood! I hate you! I hate all of you!" she screamed, spinning around, arms flailing, practically swinging at the air itself. Her face was bright red, veins popping, tears and spittle mixing into a truly grotesque spectacle. It was a full-blown, Category 5 Karen meltdown, caught live and in person. I saw at least 3 phones pointed directly at her, recording every glorious, unhinged moment. One guy even had a selfie stick out. I just picked up my burger again, took another bite, and watched her. Sweet, sweet vindication. It tasted better than any barbecue. So there she stood, right there in front of the clubhouse, a place she once ruled like a petty dictator, fresh out of the joint and acting like not a single day had passed. Her hair was still that aggressive shade of blonde, her eyes still narrowed with that familiar "I own everything" glare. She was barking orders at poor Brenda, our new and much nicer HOA manager, about a rosebush being an affront to community standards. I swear, I almost choked on my coffee. This woman, after everything, still had the audacity. I leaned back against the wall, sipping my lukewarm brew, watching the spectacle. Brenda, bless her heart, was trying to explain the new rules, the new budget, the new everything, but Karen wasn't hearing it. "This is my neighborhood," she shrieked, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at Brenda, then waving it dismissively around the beautifully renovated grounds. "You have no idea the standards I established here. I'll be calling an emergency board meeting first thing tomorrow to address this utter chaos." And that's when it hit me. That familiar surge of adrenaline, not of fear, but of pure, unadulterated satisfaction. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The years of her tyrannical reign, the endless fines, the passive-aggressive notes, the outright bullying, it all funneled into this one perfect opportunity. I finished my coffee, slowly, deliberately, setting the empty cup down on a nearby table with a soft clink that in the sudden silence sounded like a gunshot. Both Brenda and Karen turned to look at me, and I could see the dawning recognition, mixed with annoyance, in Karen's eyes. She narrowed her gaze. "Oh, it's you," she sneered, as if my very existence was a personal insult. "Still loitering, I see. Some things never change. Perhaps you should find a more productive use of your time instead of bothering the actual residents." Brenda shot me an apologetic look, but I just smiled. A slow, wide cat that ate the canary smile. "Actually, Karen," I said, my voice calm,
almost lazily casual. I am one of the actual residents, and a pretty significant one at that. She let out a scoff, a sound designed to convey maximum disdain. Please, I highly doubt that. You're lucky to still be living in that quaint little cottage on Elm Street if memory serves. Not exactly the pinnacle of our community, is it? I chuckled then, a genuine, hearty laugh that made her flinch. Oh, memory serves well, Karen. Very well indeed. But what you might not remember, or perhaps never knew, is that while you were away, things changed. Quite a bit, actually. I straightened up, putting my hands in my pockets, enjoying the moment.
You see, after you decimated the HOA's finances and after the community almost collapsed under the weight of your management, a lot of the properties went into foreclosure, and a lot of people, including some of your biggest supporters, just wanted out. Her face was a mask of confusion, then slowly, a flicker of suspicion. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice losing some of its earlier bravado. "I'm talking about opportunity, Karen," I said, leaning in just slightly. "While you were busy contemplating the finer points of prison yard aesthetics, I was busy leveraging. I was buying up those foreclosed properties, house by house, lot by lot. I bought the entire street you used to live on. I bought the common areas. I bought the clubhouse. Well, let's just say I bought a very, very significant portion of this entire development." I watched her eyes widen, the blood draining from her face. It was beautiful, pure cinematic gold. Brenda was staring at me too, jaw practically on the floor. Though she had been vaguely aware of some of my acquisitions, she clearly didn't realize the full extent. Karen, however, looked like she'd been hit by a truck. You can't," she stammered, her voice a mere whisper. "Oh, but I can, Karen, and I did. You see, when the old HOA board dissolved in disgrace, the community was desperate for stability, and I, being a major property owner, stepped up. I rebuilt it from the ground up. And in doing so, I structured a new HOA with myself as, let's just say, the primary controlling stakeholder." I let that sink in for a moment, the full weight of it. "So, when you talk about your neighborhood, Karen," I continued, my voice now devoid of any pretense of politeness, "you're actually talking about my neighborhood. When you talk about calling an emergency board meeting, you're talking about calling a meeting where I hold a majority vote. And frankly, I'm not interested in discussing your opinions on rose bushes or anything else for that matter." I took a step closer. "The new rules are very clear, Karen, and they state that residents who have a history of criminal activity and pose a risk to the community's peaceful enjoyment can have their leases or even their access terminated. And considering your recent sabbatical, you might find your options for residing here to be rather limited, especially since you're currently a tenant in one of my properties now, aren't you?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She looked around, wildly, as if expecting someone, anyone, to swoop in and save her. There was no one, just Brenda, looking relieved but also slightly stunned, and me, standing there radiating pure, unadulterated triumph. "Get out of my sight, Karen," I said, my voice flat, firm. "It's over. You had your reign. Go find somewhere else to inflict your petty tyranny. This community is finally at peace." She mumbled something, incoherent, venomous, but completely impotent. Her shoulders slumped. The aggressive blonde hair seemed to wilt. She turned, a shadow of her former entitled self, and shuffled away, defeated, shrinking into the distance. It was a sight I'd replayed in my head 1,000 times during her absence, but the reality was so much sweeter. Brenda just let out a long, slow breath. "Well," she said, a small, grateful smile spreading across her face. "That was effective." I just grinned back. "Justice, Brenda. Sweet, sweet justice." The sun seemed to shine a little brighter after that. The air felt cleaner. The neighborhood, my neighborhood, truly felt like home again. It had been a long, painful road, but seeing her walk away, knowing I had not only survived her, but had utterly and irrevocably dismantled her petty kingdom, leaving her powerless, was a level of satisfaction I never thought possible. Sometimes you just have to wait for your turn. And sometimes your turn comes with a very large property portfolio. Honestly, sometimes I just have to shake my head and laugh. Not a big, booming laugh, more like a tired chuckle, you know? Like, really, Karen? After everything, after prison, you actually thought you could waltz back in here, pick up right where you left off, and start barking orders again? The audacity, the sheer, unmitigated audacity of that woman still blows my mind. I mean, I had anticipated some level of drama. It's Karen, after all. Karen isn't just a name, it's a force of nature, a Category 5 hurricane of entitlement. But even I didn't expect her to march right up to my door, practically steaming, accusing me of defacing her neighborhood? Her neighborhood. The words still taste like ash in my mouth. My neighborhood, she means. The one I paid for. The one I saved, limb by limb, from the very mess she helped create. When I first heard the rumor she was out, a part of me, a very small, cynical part, wondered if she had learned anything. If perhaps a stint in a correctional facility, a few years to reflect on the consequences of her actions, might have, I don't know, matured her perspective? Deep down, I knew it was a foolish hope. People like Karen don't change. They just find new battlegrounds, or, in this case, try to reclaim old ones. The look on her face when I explained that, no, she could not just have a word with the new owner because I was the new owner. Man, if I could bottle that expression, I would sell it as an antidote to entitlement. It was a slow dawning, a horrifying realization that her entire world, the one she had so carefully constructed around her sense of superiority, had crumbled while she was away. And the guy she had targeted, the guy she tried to ruin, was standing right there holding the pieces. Talk about irony, huh? I could see the gears grinding, the rage building behind her eyes. You know that look, the one where their brain is frantically searching for a manager, a rule, anything to leverage, and finding absolutely nothing. It was glorious, in a very weary kind of way. Part of me just wanted to sit her down, hand her a cup of tea, and explain the intricacies of property law and silent auctions, but then I remembered who I was dealing with. Logic is not in Karen's lexicon. She just sputtered, You can't! Like I had just declared the sky was purple. And I just stood there, leaning against my own doorframe, probably with a smirk I could not quite hide, and said, Actually, Karen, I can. And I did. The silence that followed was deafening. It was the sound of a worldview shattering, the sound of a queen realizing her kingdom was gone, and the peasant she once scorned was now the king. So, what's the aftermath? Well, she eventually stormed off, muttering threats about lawyers and reporting me to, well, who exactly, I am not sure. The ghost of the old HOA? The regional manager of Common Sense? I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered the sleepless nights, the legal battles, the sheer stress she had put me through, and that feeling quickly evaporated. Now, I am just waiting for the next shoe to drop. Will she try to rally the few remaining disgruntled residents? Will she attempt some convoluted legal maneuver? Or will she just move on to terrorize another unsuspecting community? Honestly, with Karen, anything is possible. I have learned to expect the unexpected and then double it. But for now, there is a quiet satisfaction, a deep, resonant hum of justice, or at least poetic irony. The neighborhood is calmer, the grass is greener, and the one person who truly believed she owned the place is now definitively on the outside looking in. And me? I am still here, still living in my house, in my neighborhood. Just a little wiser, a little wealthier, and a whole lot more amused by the absurd twists life throws our way. Sometimes you just gotta roll with it, and occasionally
by the whole darn neighborhood.